Hey everybody, we're back again today with part two of our classic album song ranking series that Sam St. John began last week. Our special guest today is Glen Kellaway from the Basement. Today's album is Bob Dylan's 1965 classic Highway 61 Revisited, which we all
show it.
Proud to show. There we go. Fantastic. Of course, I don't want to sound too pretentious here, but is there a more important figure in rock history than Bob Dylan? Nobel Prize, poet laureate, style influencer. I mean, how many styles has the man done? Folk, blues, rock, pop, country, gospel, jazz. He's hit them all, done them all well.
He's done some rap.
And some rap. The lyrical content is the next level. Nobody can touch him lyrically. Songwriting, he attacks social issues, anti-war, counterculture. He uses in his lyrics, of course, historical figures, political, religious, literary characters. He weaves these into these masterpieces that it's up for us to decipher and interpret our way. Not an easy task, abstract, surreal at times. And of course, this album's notorious for really the whole thing going electric after he had been a folk star for so long. And his fan base was a little up in arms. They didn't know how to react to some of the concerts, and just fantastic. His sixth album, Columbia Records, went to number 3 in the US. Just a clearly different level of artist and songwriter. So glad to have you guys with us. You want to say a few words before we jump into the actual ranking? Glenn, as our guest, what do you think?
Thank you, Sam and Rich, for letting me do this with you. I was really excited from the moment you invited me, because this is one important album, one of my favorite albums of all time. And I want to do a bit of pre-Highway 61 history here. Have you guys ever heard this album? John Hammond, So Many Roads.
No, I haven't.
That's John Hammond Sr. was Bob Dylan's first producer, right? And basically discovered him as a recording artist. John Hammond Jr., the son, is a blues guy. Right. Back in the early 60s, he was doing a lot of acoustic slide stuff, and then he got into electrics, doing a lot of electric slide stuff. He wanted to record this album. He was in Toronto and saw Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks perform, and got interested in the band, who were with Ronnie Hawkins at the time. Met those guys, realized how talented they were, and he wanted to record this album. He invited them to New York to play on it. So Garth Hudson, Levon Helm, and Robbie Robertson played on this album. Michael Bloomfield, who was in Paul Butterfield, was invited to play on it too. Michael Bloomfield comes to New York to the sessions. Robbie Robertson's there wailing away in the guitar, and Michael Bloomfield backs off and goes, Robbie, you're doing a good job. Michael Bloomfield played the piano on it. Michael Bloomfield's one of the great blues rock guitar players ever lived. And it shows how much respect he had for Robbie that he backed off. So who shows up at these sessions in the spring of 1965 to check out what's going on, because he was a friend of John Hammond's, but Bob Dylan. Sees the way these guys are all playing, and then the wheels are turning. And he'd already kind of half-assed did some electric stuff on Bringing It All Back Home,
right,
one side, and then he hears all these guys, and then there's the Highway 61 Revisited stuff all comes to a head.
That's the backstory
from that. So this album is really important to the Highway 61 album. It's a great record. If you get a chance to hear it.
Like that.
Now for Highway 61, I mean, that was I was fortunate enough that one of my good friends when I was in public school, they had older brothers in college who were big folkies, and they were really good guitar players. And they were into Dylan and everything. So I knew of Dylan fairly early on. And then, of course, Peter, Paul, and Mary had to hit a Blowin' in the Wind. So I think that's probably when most people my age would have at least heard the name.
Yep. That
he was out there. And then in 65, Like a Rolling Stone hits the radio waves in like June, I think. Mm-hmm. It was recorded, or let me check my notes here. so I don't give people bad information.
Never bad information from Glenn.
No.
Like a Rolling Stone, it was released in July 20th as a single, recorded in June. And the rest of the album wasn't started recording until July 29th. So that song hit the radio waves early that summer and just blew everybody's mind. I mean, 6 minutes long. Who'd ever heard of anything like that? And that organ and the drums and the whole thing and the lyrics and just it was just a total game changer. And when I bought the 45 right away, flip it over, and Gates of Eden's on the other side. Now Gates of Eden is on Bringing It All Back Home. So then I went out and bought that album. So I had those two of them pretty much at the same time. And that was my introduction to Bob. So yeah, just a game changer.
Yeah.
And I'll shut up now.
What about you, Sam? A little background.
Yeah, it's but I came to know Dylan much later. Obviously in my musical career, I was probably about 16, I think, when I bought my first full-length Dylan album. My first Dylan album that I purchased was Oh Mercy from 1989. And then I kind of started going back and buying the other albums. And the only song I knew on this album was the first track, Like a Rolling Stone. Dylan's, some say, his greatest masterpiece. Rolling Stone for a while had it as the greatest song of all time. And I listened to it again. It's only 9 songs, and so you have some longer songs. I mean, Like a Rolling Stone, 6 minutes. Then you have Desolation Row, which is 11 minutes. And again, like you were saying in the intro, it's surreal. It's, topical lyrics, but also a lot of influences pulled in from everybody from Shakespeare to the blues guys from the Delta to, keeping to his folky roots, but, all the while staying true to himself and really becoming his own artist. And it's amazing just the output that he put out from 1964 with Another Side of Bob Dylan through 1966, Blonde on Blonde. I would say Another Side of Bob Dylan, which was his last fully acoustic album until like the 90s with his folk albums. Really, had they put electric music on it, it would have been similar to these, because those lyrics were very surreal. He was moving in that direction. It wasn't straight ahead lyrics. It involved a lot of thinking, a lot of interpretation. And then this is really when he really mastered it. Like Glenn said, Bringing It All Back Home.
Yeah,
It was half and half, kind of the merging of his two worlds, the folk world to the rock and roll world, because the Beatles were becoming massive. Help was out, Rubber Soul was coming out, and they were influencing each other. You throw Brian Wilson into the mix. At this time, Pet Sounds wasn't out, but he was moving in that direction with songs like California Girls. So all these guys were really moving together and really watching what the other one's doing. And, I've always talked about, Springsteen talks about Like a Rolling Stone from this, and how just that initial slap of the snare drum was like, shattering the barriers of what a single, what a rock song could be. And it's definitely in my top 5 favorite Dylan albums. Some days it's my favorite. I would say, it's always in my top 5 favorite Dylan albums, maybe top 3 right now. So it's killer. It's pretty daggone perfect.
yeah.
So.
All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to rank these songs worst to best, if that's possible, because the worst one's still better than 95% of everything else out there. So
It's only 9 tracks. Yeah,
only 9 tracks. At the end, we'll give the album an overall score on the 1 to 10, just for the heck of it. So anyway, Glenn is our guest. You go first. It'll be Glenn, Sam, and myself in that order. We'll go through them one at a time. So what's your number 9?
Okay, before
ahead.
one more comment is the name of the album, Highway 61 Revisited.
Yes. Good.
Highway 61 is a highway that runs from the Canadian border through the state of Minnesota, where Bob was born, past Duluth, where he hung out. I don't know how close Hibbing is to the highway, but through Duluth, right down south, through along the Mississippi River, and ends somewhere like around New Orleans or something. I mean, this is a massive highway. Yeah. And along the route there, you pass the birthplaces of Muddy Waters, Son House, Elvis, Charles Patton. Bessie Smith died from injuries suffered in a car accident along that highway. Robert Johnson sold his soul at the crossroads of Route 49 and Highway 61.
That's right.
So there was a reason it's called Highway 61, like Sam said, about kind of with the roots and
Yeah,
the music and stuff. So pretty interesting.
very.
Okay, my number 9 is from a Buick 6. It is the most demented love song ever written.
Yeah.
Graveyard Woman. She comes down the 2-lane ready to sew me with a thread and walks like Bo Diddley and like just every weird way of describing why you would love someone is in this song. But it's my number 9.
Yeah, it's also my number 9, Glenn. It's got a very similar style. I think the intro, especially, to kind of, it almost sounds like Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat, like part 1, the way it sounds. I love the bass in the song. It's fantastic. But one of my favorite stanzas is, like you said, all sorts of different ways to describe love. And he says, well, I don't need a steam shovel to keep away the dead. I need a dump truck, mama, to unload my head. She brings me everything I want besides, like I said, well, if I go down dying, she's bound to put a blanket on my bed.
Yeah.
I love it. And it's just a rocking song. It's one of the 3 kind of bluesy tracks on the album. And it's not a bad song. I mean, like Rich said, for one thing, it's a near perfect album. It's only 9 tracks, but it's the one that,
Sam, when you get married, would you use that as your first dance song?
only if you come down and play it live on your bass. And Rich will sing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's my number 9 song too. I mean, it's weird how we all have that at 9. It was actually the B-side to Positively 4th Street, which is another
I didn't know that.
Yeah, one of my favorite Dylan songs, my top 10 of all time. Love it.
Me too.
And Sam picked out the bass line. That's what drives this song for me, is the bass line.
Yeah.
Harvey Brooks got the Bo Diddley reference, which Glenn mentioned as well. Killer harmonica. It's kind of a rollicking blues song. And the thread of it is at the end, all 4 stanzas here. If I go down dying, she'll put a blanket on my bed. I mean, it's like that comforting kind of thing where, after all these lyrics, it comes back to that. So easy number 9 for me. The other 8 were tough, but I had that number 9 all the way from the beginning.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Yeah.
Wow. Number 8. I'm going to say this kind of half jokingly and kind of half not, because I hear it in my head because I'm a banjo player. This is the bluegrass song on the album, Tombstone Blues. I just hear that being played as a bluegrass song. I can just hear a banjo in that song for some reason. That's weird, but anyway, Tombstone Blues. I love Mike Bloomfield's guitar in this song. He just rips it. I love the tone. It just sounds amazing on that song. Yeah. Lyrically, again, it's all weird stuff. Knitting a bald head for Jack the Ripper, sitting on the Chamber of Commerce, and it's just all kinds of imagery and weird shit in that. I don't know if it's supposed to mean anything, but it always makes you think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Number 8 for me is the song Just Like Tom Thumb's Blues. Again, another killer intro. I love like the tacked piano. Again, another bluesy kind of track. Again, more of this. I mean, this whole album, almost all these songs could really fit as one song, because they're all so surreal and so just full of lyrical content. But yeah, it was number 8, but I love the intro, especially the tack piano is what gets it for me.
When I was making my notes about this album, the thing that got me about that song, which I've never thought before, until it just dawned on me now is that song would be very comfortable on Blonde on Blonde.
Oh yeah.
The sound of it, his voice,
Yeah.
he's got that metallic mercury sound that he said he was looking for on Blonde on Blonde.
Yeah.
That song has it.
I love how he says Rumor Avenue, like he holds it.
Yeah,
yeah.
cool.
It's very
Avenue.
Blonde on Blondish to me.
Oh, it is. Yeah, you can tell. I mean, he talks about, once he records an album, it's done. He's moving on to the next thing. Like that's old news. And especially at this time, he was writing a song, recording it quick, moving on to the next song. Like he was knocking these out in a couple of takes, and he needed the next thing.
Yeah, I have it at number 8 also. Pretty much echoing what Sam said. The surrealism, 6 verses, no chorus. I like the piano. I like Dylan's voice on this too, the way he phrases things. He accentuates certain words, which is cool. And a lot of it has to do with going to Juarez, Mexico, I think, at Easter time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all
at Easter time.
You got he's experiencing poverty. You see some poverty and some sickness. There's booze, drugs, whores, all this stuff that he's witnessing and experiencing down there. And at the end, he concludes, I'm going back to New York City. I do believe I've had enough. It's like,
great line.
Just putting it behind him, and how he got there doesn't really say, but it's a cool song, but I like the other 7 much better. But that's it.
Number 7. I've got Queen Jane approximately my number 7. Standout performance from Al Cooper on the keyboards on that one. The Hammond B3 just sounds perfect. Man, he actually, Al Cooper deserves a big assist on the way this album sounds. He did an amazing job. But that's really what stands out to me in that song is the keyboards. Won't you come see me, Queen Jane? I'm not quite sure if he's it almost sounds like he's kind of telling this woman that he's not good enough for her, and he keeps telling her, when this happens and when that happens, come and see me. When when this falls off for you, come and see me. Like it almost like I'm not going to chase you. That's the way that's what I get out of it.
That's pretty good analysis, I think. What do you got, 7?
All right. Number 7 for me is the song It Takes a Lot to Laugh. It Takes a Train to Cry. Again, they're really playing with that tack piano on this album. It's almost like a Western, this album, the way some of the lyrical content is, but I love how he hits that I ride a mail train, baby, can't buy a thrill. Just fantastic. And I love how he hits that, if I die at the top of the hill, and it's just the dun, like it's just this build up. It would have been cool if Bob would have done a straight ahead blues album. I think that would have been really interesting, even if he'd have done it like in the 80s. When he was kind of faltering. If they were just covers, I would have liked to hear him do like old Muddy Waters or songs like that, Robert Johnson songs. But
that would have been cool.
From what I read too, he was really on his game this day, because this is the same day he recorded Tombstone Blues and Positively 4th Street. He knocked all 3 of those songs out on that day.
Wow, amazing.
And again, just that blues. It's kind of got a little acoustic intro, and then it breaks into it. The piano playing is fantastic. It's a great song. It's one he still plays, obviously very differently, but it's one that stuck with him for whatever reason. So it's number 7.
We all have 3 different songs at number 7. My number 7 is Highway 61 Revisited, the title track. And Glenn mentioned, the highway that runs from Duluth all the way down to New Orleans, and that famous cross section there on Highway 61 where Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil, and also all the birthplace of all the legends that in the blues world. That's the genesis of the title, but the lyrics here, real challenging. Part of the allure, though, you're trying to decipher, all these different lyrics that are loaded in here. Oh, Howard, just point the gun. I said that on the way down to 61. You got Mac the Finger and Louis the King. And again, these characters that he's throwing. Abraham, kill me his son. How do you, and the whistle, there's that siren whistle that comes at the end of each verse, which is different. I don't know. I like hearing it, but for me to describe what it's about, not exactly easy. So a challenge. I put it at 7.
Yeah, great pick. Well, I'm putting it at 6.
Okay.
So Highway 61. I consider it a great rock song. It's like if you heard Johnny Winter's version of Highway 61, it's just killer.
I have to hear it.
That was the big
Oh
hit.
yeah, huge. He just owns it as far as I'm concerned.
Wow.
And yeah, I would just consider it a great rock song, and I love that first line too. The opening line, God said to Abraham, "Kill me a son." And Abe says, "Man, you must be putting me on." Like it's just classic lyrics, and like you said, characters. Bob's just a genius at coming up with these fictional characters that it'd be nice to know if these are based on people that he knows, and he kind of twists them into his songs as a joke, or he just makes this shit up. I don't know, but amazing song. I love it. It's just like a great rock song.
Yeah.
Number 6, Glenn mentioned it earlier, Queen Jane, approximately, and I didn't really come into knowing this song until a little bit late. Once I started getting into Dylan a little bit more. I remember listening to when John Mayer came out with his album Born and Raised, which was kind of his acoustic album, his Laurel Canyon album. I remember he put out a playlist of songs that he was listening to that inspired him, and one of them was Queen Jane, approximately. Again, some great little vignettes in all of the none of the verses really go together, but they're all like their own little story. And one of my favorites is, and I love the slowness of his singing too on this song. And he says, "Now when all of the flower ladies want back what they have lent you, and the smell of their roses do not remain, and all of your children start to resent you, won't you come see me, Queen Jane?" I love that. He's like, "And all of your children start to resent you." And again, this is another one, like you said, it could be it can be on Blonde on Blonde. You can really tell that it's just to hear him moving in that direction. I mean, just think of the time that he recorded Like a Rolling Stone to this. I mean, that was a lifetime in his writing, and it was really only a month.
Yeah, a month or two. Yeah.
So I mean, he's just, his brain was just trying to catch up to itself. But it's number 6. Great song.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's not my number 6 as well. The guitar tone is a little bit out of tune in the beginning. I think it seems like a little different, and I love the piano on this. Absolutely stunning. Al Cooper, Dylan's voice in peak condition. The lyrics go with his voice, as most of his songs do. Harmonica comes in with that squeaky pitch, halfway through. And I think Queen Jane could be very well about Joan Baez. Just changing the name, because they were friends in the folk scene, the king and the queen of folk. And I think he alludes to her being either tired or wanting to slow down.
Well, they were actually a couple.
They were a couple. I think he alludes to maybe she's burnt out from what she's doing. Won't you come see me, Queen Jane? Let's get back to where we were, that type of thing. Harmonica again. It's just a killer song, and one of the slower songs on here with what was the other one? It takes a lot to laugh, it takes a train to cry. Those are both a little bit less rowdy than some of the other tunes, but I really like it a lot. Number 6.
Wow, awesome. Number 5, Just Like Tom Thumb's Blues. I love this song. It's one of my favorite Dylan songs. Just shows how great this album is that it's only number 5.
Yeah.
Lyrically, again, I haven't got a clue what the song is about, and I mentioned when Sam mentioned it that I think it would fit very nicely on Blonde on Blonde. Just some of the words, like out on housing project hill, it's either fortune or fame. You can pick one or the other, but neither of them are to be what they claim. I'm not sure what he's getting at all, but I love it.
Good one.
Number 5 for me is one, again, that he still plays quite often in concert. It's Ballad of a Thin Man. he often closes with this song these days. Just that intro piano, the boom down 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 down. It sounds like it could be like in a Clint Eastwood movie or something. Like it's like you're walking into the saloon and it's like kind of a sour sounding piano.
Yeah.
And
It's kind of dramatic.
yeah, and again, of course, this was obviously an influence on John Lennon because he mentions it later in Your Blues on the White Album, 3 years later. Talks about Dylan's Mr. Jones, and every verse ends with that line, something's happening here, but you don't know what it is, do you, Mr. Jones? And I think it's also kind of mentioned in the, like it's referenced in the Counting Crows song, Mr. Jones. Like there's a lot of Dylan references in that song, and
Yes.
It's such a dark song, and it shows off Dylan's snarls so well, and I think that's why I love it. And the piano is like an extra character in the song. It's wonderful.
No one could snarl or be meaner in a song than Bob Dylan.
No.
And get away with it.
He's only 24 years old.
Yeah.
Great stuff. My number 5 is It Takes a Lot to Laugh, It Takes a Train to Cry. Just a straight up blues song here, wailing harmonica. The piano and drums also stand out to me. I think it's musically a standout, not so much the lyrics. They sort of take a back seat on this one compared to most of Dylan's work. But that line here, if I don't make it, my baby will. It's like got that kind of country-ish kind of vibe to it that I like. But the piano and drums on here are the standout instruments to me.
Yeah. My number 4 is It Takes a Lot to Laugh, It Takes a Train to Cry. Like you guys said, it's a great blues song. Love Dylan's vocal performance on it. I think it's one of his best recorded vocal performances.
Yep.
And the piano, the blues piano in it is outstanding. Just a great song, just a great 12-bar blues song.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Number 4 to me holds perhaps maybe my favorite Dylan line of all time, and it's Tombstone Blues. Just really fast-paced rock and roll song. I love it, but probably my all-time favorite Dylan line is where it's just really simple. He says, "The sun's not yellow, it's chicken."
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the greatest lines, because I didn't understand it for a couple of years, and then like my brain finally clicked. I'm like, oh, that's some great wordplay there, and I just think it's fantastic. And again, just the fast-paced song, always ending, one of the few Dylan songs that has a true chorus to it, where he says, "Mama's in the kitchen, she ain't got no food."
Right.
Just that whole segment is fantastic, and again, that line in itself makes it higher up for me. So Tombstone Blues.
I have Tombstone Blues at number 4. To me, it's a surreal, chaotic kind of song, really, lyrically. Again, you got the historical, biblical, pop culture. You got Jack the Ripper in here, John the Baptist, Jezebel, Paul Revere, Galileo, Beethoven, Ma Rainey. He's got all these characters in the song.
He was reading a lot.
Yeah, knitting a bald wig for Jack the Ripper, who sits at the head of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, exactly. And he got the just outrageous, bizarre lyrics and trying to make sense out of them. And that line that Sam mentioned, "The sun's not yellow, it's chicken." I have that written down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So great.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. It's just we would go on for hours trying to analyze it, and we still wouldn't get it, because that's what Dylan does. He wants you to, be a little bit in the dark on what he's trying to. I don't know. It's just a mystery, mystique, whatever it is. He's the master at it, and he's made a career doing it. So, love it.
That's I think you're familiar with that Red on Blonde album, Tim O'Brien's.
Oh yeah, I've got it in my collection. Yeah.
Isn't Tombstone Blues on there?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it.
I want to say it's the opening track.
Yeah,
I think it's the opening track.
Yeah, because it is kind of he turned it into a bluegrass song. So
yeah,
I'm just going, no, yeah.
You'll have to listen to that now.
I'm gonna have to pull it out.
Rich, you need to hear that album. I don't know how much you like bluegrass, but the Red on Blonde album by Tim O'Brien is just, it's
I have to
fantastic.
check that out. I want to hear Johnny
Great.
Walker's version too of the other song we talked about.
He
Oh,
does.
yeah, Johnny.
My favorite song on that album is his version of Senor.
Yes. The
Tales
best
of Yankee
song.
Power.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. It is so good.
That's
Charlie
a-
Cushman on the banjo. Oh,
Glenn, let me ask you a question real quick. Have you ever listened to Tombstone Blues and sat there and played the banjo with it just to get the?
no, not really. But it's pretty basic. I mean, it's just again, it's like a 12-bar blues chord progression, and it'd be very simple to do. It'd just be speed it up and let it rip. When Sam and I get together, we're going to work on a version of that.
I would like
Yeah,
to
we'll
see
sit
that.
on some interstate rest stop in May. And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
busk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we're now to number 3.
Top 3.
Yeah,
Ballad of a Thin Man. One of the great songs ever, I think. And I think it's about the press,
yeah,
because he was asked a lot of stupid questions. And if you watch Dylan's press conferences in those days, he answered very facetiously, and he was
They
always
were
trying
even
to.
asking him about his shirt, like in the album
Yeah.
cover. Yeah.
Yeah, like they'd ask him such stupid questions, and he'd always try and make them look stupid for the questions they were asking. And it was like, you know something's happening, but you don't know what it is,
right.
And it also, I took it at the time of just becoming into my teenage years, and I don't know if there was another generation than mine that had such a generation gap between us and our parents.
Yeah,
I see the relationship I have had with my kids when they were teenagers, and I thought we had a pretty good relationship. And I think my parents probably had a better relationship with their kids, but I didn't want to have anything to do with my parents when I was a teenager, and they didn't understand me, and I didn't understand them. And this song kind of spoke to that. It was like, you know something's happening, but you don't really know what it is, do you? Like I felt like I was saying that to my parents.
right. Good one.
Number 3 for me is the title track, Highway 61 Revisited. It's always been a favorite for me. I remember Bob did it the second time that I saw him. It was his second song, and he pretty much stuck pretty well to the original. Even I think Charlie Sexton even played some slide on it, but great blues song. I love the whole opening verse of God and Abraham, which is from Genesis, where he tells Abraham to kill his son as a sacrifice, and it shows that Abraham is willing to do it, but Bob kind of twists it with everything else in the song, and makes everything about like these weird situations that people have to get out of. And it kind of goes along with, like Glenn said at the intro, with Highway 61 and Robert Johnson selling his soul. It's all about these very difficult choices that people have to make.
Yep.
And it goes right in with the whole Robert Johnson myth about selling his soul to the devil. And it's one of Bob's rockiest songs. I love the slide. Again, it was made famous by Mr. Winter. And it's just one of those that I feel like anybody that has any kind of rock and roll sense can make this song sound pretty good. So I've always loved it.
Great. My number
It is a great
3
song.
is Ballad of a Thin Man. Again, Glenn hit on the press, the paparazzi, whoever were hounding him at the time. Well, Bob, what does this song really mean? And he got so sick of that. It's up to the listener or somebody to interpret it, and it means whatever it means to you. I mean, I think I've heard him say that before. He's not going to give you the answer. You have to delve into it and read into it what you want and make it how it affects you. And that's the genius of Bob Dylan. Anybody out there that there are people in the VC we know that don't get into Dylan. It's either the voice or whatever it is that sets them off. But all they need to do is dive down, pay attention, listen, and use your mind and try and figure some of this stuff out. It's unusual, but he's one of a kind, flat out. There's nobody else that can do what he's doing.
It's like people that say that they don't understand Shakespeare.
Yeah,
he's got these surreal moments, and the story might be hard to follow, but it involves thinking. It's not like basic rock and roll that is just it's just made to make you move. Dylan is out there really making you think. Dylan isn't Dylan isn't writing songs to make you dance, like Chuck Berry or any of those guys. He's out there to make you think and like really ponder the lyrics. That's probably why he didn't do a lot of courses.
There's I was reading, some pundit made the comment that Like a Rolling Stone was the song that took people off the dance floor, like from 50s rock and roll up to the early Beatles stuff.
Yeah.
It was like you put that on and everybody went to a party and they danced and, in the basement and all that. And then Like a Rolling Stone comes on and everybody got off the dance floor, sat down and started listening to music.
Right.
And when you think about it from that point on, it got that way.
It did.
Yeah.
I know it got that way in my lifetime. It was just like you'd just sit around and smoke joints and listen. Nobody was up dancing. That was a whole different crowd of individuals who were still tied up to the Elvis stuff and everything. But everything just changed.
I think all the singer-songwriters that came after all were listening to Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And obviously, from Jackson Browne to the Crosby, Stills, Nash guys to Joni Mitchell, they all were.
And the Beatles.
Yeah. The Beatles. Yeah.
Well, right.
The Stones, all of them.
All of them. They were all sitting around getting high and trying to.
It changed everything. This album was a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what he's saying with I think all of us are Mr. Jones. We're all trying to, figure it out. It says, because something is happening here, but you don't know what it is, do you, Mr. Jones? He's talking about everybody out there besides himself.
It's a very generic name. Yeah.
It is. Right. And, and it's a media circus. He uses a couple of metaphors here with the sword swallower and the one-eyed midget, that type of thing. It's like this whole circus around him is, he was, the cat's meow back then. And I guess it's hard to be in the center of that. And there's that one shot in that documentary, Don't Look Back, where Bob's in the limousine and all the cameras are flashing and the people are knocking at the window and, getting him out of the arena. It's tough being the center of everybody's attention, especially if you're a shy, introverted person, which I think he was or is.
Mm-hmm.
Still is, for sure.
Yeah. So that's my number 3. Now we're down to the big 2.
The big 2 are two.
We all have the same.
Of
We all have the same 2.
My top 5 Dylan songs of all time. These 2 songs are in it. So
same album. Yeah.
It was really hard to pick, but my number 2 is Like a Rolling Stone, which I always consider the greatest single song of all time. It was a game changer, revolutionary. It just changed everything. There's not a more important single record in the history of music, as far as I'm concerned, than Like a Rolling Stone.
Yep.
Yeah, it's my number 2 as well. Again, it's one of those where I remember when I first heard that this was the number 1 song on Rolling Stone's list, I guess back in 2011 when they did it before this most recent time, which I won't get into, but
please. Yeah,
I won't. But
yeah,
I didn't really get I'm like, why is that the number 1 song? Because again, at that point when I first heard that list, I was like, I'm not really big into Dylan, but then I really listened to the song and understood, about poverty and everything that was coming up. I mean, civil rights, everything that was happening at that time is encompassed in this song. You just have to really listen for it. Again, it could be about himself too, to an extent. The whole Once Upon a Time You Dressed So Fine. Fame was kind of catching up to him at this point. And I think also when he went on that electric tour after this album came out with the band, with the Hawks, minus Levon, it was funny because everybody booed during the set except for this song because it was a hit. Like a Rolling Stone was a hit, so everybody sang along, and then they were like, "Oh, that song's over. Let's get back to booing." It tells that story. It just shows the impact that song had, and it's amazing how just a few years later, you listen to the Before the Flood live album, and you can hear the people singing this the screams, whereas just a few years prior, he was being ostracized for playing this kind of music, the rock, and of course, this was the song, that just before somebody yelled Judas, that he was a traitor to the folk scene, and he tells the band to play it effing loud, and they all jump into it, which is one of the best lines in rock and roll history. You know, he's just like, you know, I don't believe you, and you know, he's like
Yeah,
high
yeah.
on whatever he's high on, ticked off at the world. And it's like Glenn said, it's so important to understand this song, and possibly his shining moment. Definitely a turning point in his music.
Absolutely. I have it at
Now
number.
this will be interesting. What song's at number 2 for Rich?
Well, what do you think it's going to be?
Well, it's this or Desolation Row. I'm
Yeah.
curious. I wouldn't know. I don't know. I could flip a coin. So
I'm going to take Desolation Row at number 2,
okay.
but you could argue easily it's a poetic masterpiece. I mean, but flat out, as is like a Rolling Stone. I had to flip a coin because it's close. I'm not sure I completely understand Desolation Row, but I love the lyrics in it. It's like, again, a counterculture, the misfits. They're trying to exist in the real world, I guess, and the only escape may be to go to Desolation Row, where it's not, it's kind of empty and it's kind of serene compared to what's going on in the real world. You can get rid of your stress by just, and your baggage, by going to Desolation Row. You've got these characters again: Cain and Abel, Phantom of the Opera, Casanova, Robin Hood, Einstein, T.S. Eliot, Ophelia. Just where does a guy come up with all these characters and weave them into an 11-minute song?
Yeah.
I don't know how he did it. I'm jealous because I would love to be able to write like that. I've tried writing, and you know, as soon as you listen to Dylan, you go, what's the point? I'll never be that good or that clever or that insightful. So you give up because there's only one of a kind. I mean, nobody else does
Yeah.
it. You know, I just don't you know, to completely understand this song is impossible. And I think that's part of the intent, part of the allure, part of the challenge of Bob Dylan. So I'm putting it number 2 only because the one I have at number 1 is so iconic and so important.
Yeah.
Blowing in the
Awesome.
wind, isn't it?
Yeah, it's up
Yeah.
to Glenn.
Blowing in the wind. Yeah.
Okay, drum roll. My number 1, Desolation Row. 11 minutes and 21 seconds of genius.
Yes.
Tied for number 1 as my favorite Dylan song with Visions of Johanna off Blonde on Blonde. The two of them are like lyrically just up there for me.
Yep.
What I made notes here so I wouldn't forget other things I wanted to say. Love the acoustic guitar that weaves through the song.
Mm-hmm.
It was played by Charlie McCoy, who's a Nashville session guy who was called up. They supposedly recorded the song electrically quite a few times, and they just weren't happy with the feel of the song. And then Bob Johnson, the producer, called Charlie McCoy in. They did it acoustically with him doing all that cool kind of almost sounds Spanish or something to me. The little
like Marty Robbins
guitar. And that just turned the song around and made it brilliant. And also, I mean, Dylan went to Nashville to record the next album, Blonde on Blonde, which I'm sure kind of tied in because I know Bob Johnson was trying to encourage him to go down there and play with these guys. So I'm sure once he played with Charlie McCoy once and got that result, it was a pretty easy decision to go to Nashville for the next incredible album. The imagery is amazing, surreal. It's hard to interpret.
Yeah.
Each line in the song, it goes in different directions all through the song, and they all end up in the desolate place called Desolation Row. But Rich mentioned the characters in the song, so there are some real life characters too, like Albert Einstein and Nero, and there are biblical characters with Noah and Cain and Abel. And there are fictional characters, Romeo and Cinderella, and there's a guy named Dr. Filth who keeps his world under his leather coat. I read a comment about the song, which I thought it's perfect. It says, I'll quote it, it says, a folk song of the absurd.
Yeah.
That's pretty much sums it up. So Desolation Row, just 11 minutes and 21 seconds of genius.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, it's my number 1 too. So
and hold on, the harmonica at the end, it just makes the hairs in the back of my neck stand up every time I hear it.
Yeah.
That's your favorite Dylan harmonica solo, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that from our Dylan video.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's brilliant. It's one of those songs. It's 11 minutes, but you don't think of it as 11
Oh.
minutes. You know, it's probably the shortest 11-minute song you'll ever listen to.
Yeah.
And the Grateful Dead covered it. I'm sure you know Glenn. I mean,
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
this Bob Weir, I think, did the lead
Yeah.
vocals on when they do it, and he still does it with Dead and Company and solo. But I love the whole section here where he says, Cinderella, she seems so easy. It takes one to know one. She smiles, puts her hands in her back pockets, Betty Davis style. I love that imagery of Betty Davis, like in her jeans.
Yeah.
Like in those old movies. It's brilliant. Then he says, in comes Romeo, he's moaning, you belong to me, I believe. Someone turns and says, you're in the wrong room, my friend, you better hurry up and leave. And the only sound that's left after the ambulances go is Cinderella sweeping up on Desolation Row.
Yeah.
It's just all these tiny little mini movies almost that he's putting into 11 minutes. And I feel like it's one of those, because I think when he wrote Like a Rolling Stone, he had how many pages of lyrics for Rolling Stone?
4 pages full of lyrics or
At
something.
least, and I'm
whittled
sure
down to 4 verses.
For like a novelette. I mean, this is essentially Desolation Row. I mean, if you were just to read it, you know, as its own thing, it could have been its own piece of poetry without music. And again, you mentioned Charlie McCoy's almost flamenco style playing, and kind of sounds like El Paso or something like that. And actually, to kind of plug myself here, when the fire took place at Notre Dame Cathedral, this song kept popping in my head because he mentions the Hunchback of Notre Dame is how he pronounced it. And so I wrote a song based around the fire that took place at the cathedral. Wow. But I did it in the tune of Desolation Row because I took it like the folk style.
Cool.
Used the same chords and everything. I love like the whole like down down ding 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 down down. All throughout it. And so like I'm like that just keeps popping in my head. And I'm like, I can write a song about this fire and try to make my own melody. And I'm like, why wouldn't I just use this? Because that's what Bob Dylan did. That's what Dylan does.
He did.
So I did it, and I think mine was 11 minutes. Mine was about 5 or 6 minutes, but
very cool.
It's one of my favorite tunes. Again, I love the music of it. It's one of the best musical songs from Dylan. And then, of course, one of the greatest lyrically. And I think when we did our list, Glenn, this was definitely my top 10. And it jumps around to number 1, you know, depending on the day. But it's the best on the album for me.
It's hard to argue. Like I said, I could have flipped a coin, but I went with number 1 is Like a Rolling Stone, just for the place it has in history. And it's worthy of it, of course. Cynical, confrontational, kind of snarky, snarly. Those lyrics are genius. Al Cooper's organ, unbelievable. Mike Bloomfield's guitar again. I think actually the target here is Edie Sedgwick, the socialite who was in the Andy Warhol scene back then, Miss Lonely character. I think that's really who he's writing about, because he's saying, because she came from money. Once upon a time, you dressed so fine, threw the bums and dime, didn't you? In your prime, didn't you? So he's saying, what happened? Now you're hanging out with these misfits and these losers, or whatever he wants to say. You're scrounging your last meal. When you've got nothing to lose. She's probably rebelling from her parents' lifestyle and hung out there for a reason. She died at a very young age as well. The harmonic is killer. Got no direction home, so she's sort of stuck. I just love everything about it, and it was probably always going to be number 1. But I listened to this album like 3 times this week just to get familiar with it again. And Desolation Row is as close to perfect as you can get as a piece of literature, just like Sam said, without the music, poetry, and that's what that is.
When I was in college, I in an English course I was taking, they made us do a thing on comparing a song to a poem or something, and I ended up doing T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, because T.S. Eliot is mentioned in the song, and Desolation Row. And if you read The Wasteland, there's a lot of, I get the feeling Dylan might have been inspired
Definitely.
Desolation Row with that.
Probably
Yeah.
was, sure.
Yeah.
Stuff. Well, this was a really fun one, guys. I really appreciate that. It was really a deep dive into some Bob Dylan.
It was.
We're gonna have Glenn back when we hit Blonde on
Blonde on
Blonde.
Blonde. Oh, you
Definitely,
gotta have
and
Blonde
Blood
on
on the
Blonde.
Tracks. We're gonna do both
Both
of them.
tracks.
Okay.
Right now we're in the revolving situation where we have a different VC member each week, so we will definitely hit that up. So subscribe to Glen Kellaway from the Basement if you haven't already. Sam St. John, two of my favorite guys in the VC. Glad to be doing this with them. Check out our past. Well, this is our second venture into this series. We did Band on the Run with Larry Graves last week. I'll link that below if you haven't seen it. Larry, how's it going? We'll have you back too. So for Glen Kellaway.
What's our rank? What's our
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Sam. I almost screwed that up. I would have had to edit, and I don't like editing. Glenn, what is your rank? Now, let me just give you the parameters. 10 is a perfect masterpiece. 1 is a piece of crap. 5 is mediocre all the way, and you can go any number in between.
I want to say 10, but I'm not going to because I'm going to say 9.
You can use half points too.
Okay, I'm going to give it a 9.
Okay.
It's close to perfect. It's close to perfect. There's a couple of like From a Buick 6.
Yeah.
Probably is just it's a good song. I like it, but just I don't know. There's a couple albums that I consider perfect albums, and this is just below that by this much.
I like how you're being objective there. Very nice. So what about you, Sam?
I too will go with a 9 for this album, not a 9.5, because when I think of a couple of albums that I consider perfect, including a Bob Dylan album, this one's not quite there. So it's a 90% for me.
I'm going to go 9.5 because I gave Band on the Run a 9, and this is better than Band on the Run. I mean, realistically.
Sorry, Paul.
Sorry, it just is. I mean, it's at a different level. 10s are hard to give. I probably won't give it 10 the whole series, but 9.5 is still strong, and 9s are great too. So we're tough scorers here.
Yeah, really tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
we should have given it a 6.
Nah,
That would have been tough.
6 is going to be a classic album.
That's insane. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for watching again.
Thanks, guys, for
subscribe.
having me on.
Glen Kellaway from the Basement. Sam St. John. We'll do this again. And thanks for watching, everybody out there. Take care. Peace.